Good morning, everybody. It's good to see you. My name's Leanne Pickrell. Heather Hicks is, she is texting me right now, so I'm hoping she's on. She's having some buffering on her end, but hey, that's the name of the game this year. My name is Leanne Pickrell. Several of you know me. It's great to see a lot of you. Good to see Kathy and in person. So I am the Gifted and Talented Coordinator in Paris Independent Schools. And up until last year, I was teaching third grade and being the GT coordinator for the entire district. So we are a very small district. Our population is very diverse. We have our largest minority group is English language learning students. And so we have a lot of students with families that need support with understanding documentation and communication with some of our school staff. So we have that support. We are pretty high, low socioeconomic status district. So, a great majority of our students qualify for free and reduced lunch. And as I said, we're a small district. We are an independent school district in central Kentucky. We have about 800 students in the entire district. Just because it's so interesting, and from being in Kathy's seat in the past, every district is so very different. Our central office staff consists of our superintendent, assistant superintendent, and a special education director, and that's it. So we don't have, a large number of instructional supervisors or folks that are over a variety of different things. Everybody just wears a lot of hats in our district. So it's great to be there. It's a wonderful place to be. We just finished a certification cohort and added 5 new GT certified teachers to our district. And so we're thrilled about that and look forward to sharing some information with you all today.
Thank you. Heather, would you like to update us on your school district?
So I don't know if Heather's on. Heather,
I think I saw her.
Okay.
I think but it looks like she is not here now.
Oh.
So Dr. Julia, I have Heather's information if you want me to share it.
Would you please?
So Heather Hicks is from a large district. She is in Boone County. Approximately 21,000 students, 25 schools. They are also very diverse. Approximately 40% free and reduced lunch, 7% EL. And their EL students represent 64 home languages and 69 birth countries. And she has approximately 2,000 gifted and talented students in her district.
And our districts are indeed different, aren't they? How were you involved in planning re-entry for special populations in your district?
Well, our district had a re-entry task, had several re-entry task force. In fact, we had an instructional group, we had a exceptional learners group, and then we had an operational team that worked on our guidance and planning for a variety of different topics. So I participated on the exceptional learners reentry task force, and my predominant role in that work was planning for gifted and talented students reentry and how we would meet their needs and how we would serve them through this crazy year. Just so everybody on the call knows, so I think it's important to kind of hear what our options were for the district. So in Paris Independent Schools, every family had the option for a fully remote experience this school year. or an in-person experience. And so our fully remote learners have the option to come back to in-person instruction at fall break, winter break, or spring break. And our in-person students can move to remote learning at any time. And so, and then of course, as with everyone, our entire district can also move to an NTI fully remote experience at any time. We will start on September 8th in a fully remote environment with all of our students fully remote, and we are not doing packets this time. We are providing a Chromebook for every single child in our district and Wi-Fi if they do not have access to internet at home. And so that's kind of our setup for this school year. And so I worked within that framework to set up how our gifted and talented students would re-enter this environment.
Would you like to share Heather's information on how she was involved?
Sure. Heather also, like me, participated in her district level reentry planning. She provided language for schools and stakeholders in the district guidance documents for reentry, specific to meeting the needs of high potential and gifted learners. And so in a district the size of Boone County, I'm sure there are multiple documents that go out to principals, particularly with the number of schools. In my district, since it's smaller, we do have documents, but we also have just, you know, people can call my cell phone around the clock with what to do for gifted students. So, so it's a little different for both of us. I know Heather has worked extensively working with their online platform and how they would service gifted students in that environment.
And this will be a question for you and Kathy. What if your school or district did not involve you in planning during the summer? What advice do you have for those coordinators and teachers?
You know, I think it's been a really tough summer for a lot of administrators. Some of you know this, some of you don't know this. I moved into an administrative role this summer in our district, and so I now serve as the Dean of Students at Paris Elementary School. And I think many of our leaders have just been overwhelmed by health and safety. And I don't think I certainly don't think it's an intentional thing if gifted and talented was left out. I think I would work through the chain of command and, provide some information. I think I would come with ideas rather than anger and frustration that you felt left out. So, for instance, when I was asked to be on the task force, that was it. Like, will you be on the task force? And so, with that, I could have done as little or as much as I wanted, I guess, but I didn't really necessarily have, very specific information about what I needed to prepare. And so I think if I were in that boat, I would really want to kind of come with a plan. So the plan that I went into the year with, whether I was on the task force or not, was to continue to do the annually required training, to continue to assess students, to continue to have our gifted and talented service committee meetings at all of our buildings. And so those were things that for me, are not changing. So we had a foundation to build on. Of those are things that would be the same. We would also have gifted student service plans. And so those two assessment pieces of the GSS portion were where I really had to think about what services would look like. And so I would maybe suggest that that's a good place to start with your suggestions about, 704 KR 3285 is not waived. It's not been, it's not pulled away. We still have a responsibility to gifted students. And I think I would just begin with, I've been thinking about our gifted students and our gifted program, and I've come up with some solutions that I think may work for serving our gifted students and meeting their needs. And kind of work through your chain of command to get that process up and running. For us, our plan is still to do in-person assessment whenever that is possible. And so as soon as we have a window where we have most of our students in, we will do in-person assessment. And so that was part of our plan. And I think that would be really important for those of you that are planning for this year to come with a plan. For our remote students, we're still working through that. And I think that I think it's okay for you to say, I need a little bit of, advisement in this area. I think I've got these pieces worked out. And then also for our plan, I knew services would need to be different this year or would need to look different. And so coming into it, I had a proposal that I felt was very tight. And you guys are the experts in your district. You're the ones that know what needs to happen. And so coming with a plan is so helpful because your leaders are, solutioned out. They have really come up with solutions for a million things they've never thought about. And so the solution I came with was that we would have a GSSP that included 3 options for the year. And so if you're in person, this is what it looks like. If you're remote, this is what it's going to look like. And if you are NTI for an intermittent closure, this is what will happen. And so as we develop our GSSPs, that's really how we will look at services based on the student interest, needs, and abilities. We updated our student interest, need, and ability survey to include access information. And so I think as much as possible, reach out to other people that you trust, your cadre leader, and share your ideas with them, and then move into that process within your district of trying to get GT to the table. Because listen, I know it's hard. So, just try to work your magic and then move into working with your district. So,
Leanne, there was a question in the chat if you could share more about what those GSSPs include for each of the options.
So yes, so Mindy, I see the question. I think it will still depend. Like, we're currently collecting interest, needs, and abilities information. And so through our GT coaches, we will work for every kid at an individual level to determine what is the best fit. So at Paris Elementary School, our platform is Google Classroom. And so we have GT coaches at each of our buildings, which is crazy that a district of 800 now has, my principal is GT certified. I am GT certified. We have 5 new coaches that are just certified, and our assistant superintendent also has certification. So it's amazing to have that many people looking out for the needs of gifted kids, and I'm so thankful to be where I'm at. So I will work with the GT coaches for each child to determine, are they in a dual credit class? Are they not, what is the advanced course offering that is available? We've just hired numerous new staff, and so we have some new course offerings at the high school. And so when you're in person, that may look like differentiation within the classroom, but when you're remote, it may look like consultation or collaboration. And so we're looking at all of those services on a kid-by-kid basis. For an intermittent closure, I just don't want there to be a question about if GT is bonus work or extra or something that's not required, because in the spring we moved so quickly that it really became difficult to meet their needs in a immediately remote environment where many students didn't have access to technology. And so enrichment was seen as something extra to do that wasn't a part of their regular day. And so we just want to spell out what that means in the GSSP in an intermittent closure situation. And then also we have our GT coaches will be doing some live lessons. They'll do some recorded lessons. And then we will also be collaborating and consulting with teachers in the classroom to provide services. And those are different things than we've done traditionally. So traditionally, like many districts, it's been differentiation and enrichment. But this year it will be significantly different, and we will be looking at multiple different types of services that maybe are not as common. We're also looking at, I can't think of the name of it right this second. I think, Kathy, is it digital learning or remote learning? I can't remember the exact name of that service option.
Distance learning?
Distance, thank you. So distance learning, we're also looking at that. So it's just different this year. It'll be very individualized in our district.
Those are all really good things. And just to piggyback on what Leanne was saying, she offered some really good advice there, someone who's boots on the ground. We met yesterday as our GT leader cadre, and gifted student service plans came up yesterday, and the topic of distance learning, that option. And so it's a district decision about what you offer to students there and what you check in Infinite Campus. But I kind of felt like, and I think there were several people who agreed with me, that you wouldn't necessarily check distance learning if that was something everybody in your district was being provided. Now, if you're, because distance learning, it could come in several different ways there. Now, if you're doing, some sort of enrichment, like a seminar or a mentor, and they're meeting through, a digital platform, then you would mark that specifically, mentoring or seminar. I don't think you would mark distance learning. But it depends on your district and what your needs are. Also, something to think about too is just like Leanne said, being a help, having that attitude of a servant. I think this year is going to be so important because we have people who are just really struggling and feeling overwhelmed. So I think communication is going to be really important, making sure that you have your list of students that that you can email that to the regular classroom teacher, because they're going to be definitely helping you differentiate instruction for students. So if you can make sure you send a list of students so that people know who those students are and what they're identified in, I think that would be really helpful to to teachers this year. Also, working with your supervisor, really important to have a good working relationship with that person. And like Leanne said, to come with a plan, a strategy for, how are we going to finish assessing students that maybe we didn't finish assessing in the spring? What is our plan going to be moving forward this year for assessing and screening students? Because as Leanne said, the regulation hasn't been waived. We still have to identify students. We still have to serve students. We still have to give a progress for students. And I don't want to overwhelm you, but do the very best that you can. It's better to do something than to do nothing, is kind of the way I feel about it. And not that you should just kind of do it half-heartedly, because I know that you won't. I know that many of you work very, very hard to serve the students and staff in your districts. But it's so important you've had time now to think about, well, what is my strategy going to be for this year? And so come with those ideas, come with those solutions to help your staff this year.
I like the practical suggestions you're both offering there. It is important to have a plan. If those of you on this update have questions, why don't you put those in the chat and we'll try and address a few of them. So if you were looking at suggestions that you think will make assessment of students' identification possible this year, what would be one or two of those suggestions that you think others could benefit from thinking about?
Well, I think first of all, I think we need to acknowledge that it is going to be very difficult this year in terms of assessing our gifted students. So, I think admittance is the first step, right? So I think that, we need to know going in that it's going to be really tough. Had several conversations with teachers at our building yesterday. And this is just assessment in general, that they want to bring families in because, they're assessing new kindergartners or first graders, and they're afraid that mom or whoever will be in the background giving the answers. And, as much as we hope that doesn't happen, I think that, it's a very real possibility, and we just need to know that going into it and just, not wring our hands like, oh gosh, this isn't valid. We want every assessment to be valid, but we also have to acknowledge the difficulty of the situation. We spoke about MAP in our district, and I know many of you are MAP districts, and the ability to assess remotely using MAP. And so that is, it's great that it can be remote, but there are some limitations. So if you are assessing with MAP, you have a couple of options. You can turn on your lockdown browser and they can get to nothing else. And we have no idea if mom or dad or whoever is helping out with that. The other option is to not turn off the lockdown browser, and so they can navigate to other sites, but you have the ability to have a Google Meet or a Zoom going on with a small group of students to see them assessing remotely. And I think that we just need to acknowledge that there are pros and cons with every single assessment model that we can use this year. And so, go into it with, we have some, we don't have great choices, but we have some choices. And so talk with your district about the best option for those that are assessing in person with booklets and, possibly bringing students in. I think that if you have the opportunity to do in-person testing, I would certainly recommend that. That can be accomplished. I'm thinking about what it looks like to bring in our third grade students those that are remote, in a socially distanced manner, maybe in our gym or maybe in our cafeteria at a specific point, and assessing students that are fully remote. And so I think I would just think about the outside of the box. And, you know, as I told some of our teachers yesterday, we know that things are going to happen with remote testing. We know that it's not the same level of validity if you are in a classroom walking around monitoring every single child. And so I think we have to get beyond worrying about parents helping or, you know, whatever it is, and just get to a solution that you can live with. And so for us, when I bring in our remote students for testing, I'll probably do kind of a 2-day thing like I would do in the classroom. I'd probably do a morning session, you know, with one group of students, an afternoon session with another group, just to make sure we can get everything turned over with sanitizing and things like that. And then put a little bit of time in between there. If that's not an option for your district and you are, you know, assessing with paper booklets and things like that, I don't have a great answer about that. You know, many of our districts have not invested in assessments for GI or assessments for science and social studies that can be delivered fully remotely with technology. And so, you know, I'll be honest, I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about that because we don't have that technology available. So I'm working within the constraints that I know that I'll experience in Paris. And as far as our, you know, other areas that don't require a formal assessment, you know, formalized screening tests, things like that, I think that I would continue to, you know, kind of ring that bell of nominate and identify. And, you know, we have kids, my own child is, she's had a lot more time to practice her guitar and practice singing in this time away from formalized schooling. And so I think I would really, really make sure that you're sharing those opportunities for parents, for students, for peers, for teachers to nominate students, and then work within your constraints to collect evidences. One thing that I think is really important this year, like we're rolling out our annual training just like we do every year. And so I think that's important for people to realize that gifted and talented is not just when it's a convenient thing, and that it will still go on and we will figure it out. So that, you know, I would just work within your constraints. Please feel free to reach out to me if you're kind of in the same boat as me, and I'll be happy to talk you through, you know, the highs and lows. And I think there'll be a lot of lows. But Kathy, if you've got other ideas,
Leanne, those were some really good practical suggestions that you offered there and some good insights into what you guys are doing. Thank you for that. Someone asked a question about, can we use MAP to identify new students? So here's the guidance on that. MAP is kind of more of a diagnostic type assessment. So when I had called NWEA about, you know, how to use that for identification, they suggested that you use usually about 3 consecutive assessments, that you look to see if students were meeting that 9th stay 9 pretty consecutively, probably 2 out of 3 times. So don't look at just one data point, you know, try to go back and look at several data points, because if you see a student that spikes all of a sudden, that might be a flag that maybe that was maybe a valid test. I mean, who's to say, really? But that's why it's good to look at more than just one data point with MAP. That's really important, I think. Also, especially with your PTP students, please think about being inclusive rather than exclusive. I mean, it is not going to hurt anyone to receive services or to receive enrichment during this time. And to offer resources and to be that support for your gifted people. And as Leanne was saying about assessments this year, also think about screening, and maybe think, outside the box of maybe using an assessment. Is there some other methods you could use? Could you train your teachers to use maybe the Hope Scale, or could you use the jot downs, and have all your teachers think about that and looking for students during the first 6 weeks or so of school, and using those jot downs as a screening method for all the students that they're working with this year, in order to maybe get away from maybe a formal assessment, if you will. And then also using those other the behavior checklists, as well as some of those other things, but thinking about maybe getting away from screening, I guess is what I'm trying to say. What else could be done to make sure that you're equitably looking for all that talent and all those gifted students that are in your district? Looking at your MAP assessment or your STAR assessment, that diagnostic assessment that your district uses to help you flag students for those specific areas. But then, as you work with, maybe try to have some professional learning communities where if you do that, meeting with your fine arts people and saying, hey, as you've been working with people over last year, was there anybody that kind of bubbled to the top that really showed an interest in singing or playing the guitar, or just really seemed to really like drawing last year, or any of those arts? Those students that ask those questions, those creativity questions about, well, what if we did it this way? Or how would it work if we did it that way? Those types of questions that indicate that a child's mind is working a little bit differently than, say, someone who thinks maybe more linearly about, well, what would the next step be for that? But I could do this, and I wonder what that would happen with that. So important to have that communication, I think, with parents. And with staff.
And I think the fact that both of you have talked about professional learning remaining important, please know that one of the biggest challenges we face is educators having a belief gap. And that is, you don't see children from lower income families, or Black or brown children, or special education students as being potential gifted students. And of course, all of those have the potential, and we need to be working to make sure they shine and that they can be the ones that are given the opportunities to develop at the highest levels. Any final advice before we move on to the next presenter?
Just do the best you can this year.
Absolutely.
That's all that anybody can do. Try not to worry, try not to stress. As long as you are doing the best that you can, go to sleep at night, lay down, rest.
Leanne?
I would say just give a lot of grace this year to yourself, to your administrators, to your leadership, to parents and kids, because I'll just say for the administrator, from the administrator seat, we're making decisions that we never in our life thought we would have to figure out where to store a 55-gallon drum of hand sanitizer, where to buy that from, if who's allergic to what, how to teach teachers how to create a Bitmoji classroom. That's the furthest thing that has ever been from my mind. So just give a lot of grace and know that we're going to learn a whole lot about the platforms. Even this week, we're using Google Meets because it works best for our Chromebooks, and we realized that, fun fact, the link never goes away, and kids can get back on there later and do whatever they do, and so there's just constant new learning, constant decisions that are being made on fresh information from your administrator. So give them a lot of grace. Yourself too, there's a lot to learn. Fail fast and move on. Like, try things. If it's terrible, just own it and move on and do something different. For your kids, your students, just know that they are operating in all kinds of weird circumstances, whether it's, at the beauty shop because mom cuts hair and they're over in the corner trying to do their work wearing a mask and, sweeping up hair in between, or, whatever it is. We have families that have 8 children trying to share a hotspot. And so, with a parent that cannot read and cannot speak English. And so a lot of grace. And then parents too, there's just so many frustrations. And your colleagues, we're dealing with a lot of outside stressors that people have not dealt with before. Personally, we just, like my husband's 98-year-old grandfather has just, I think yesterday or the day before, finally tested negative for COVID-19. So that's been a stressor for our family. He is the oldest person to survive in the hospital where he was placed. And so there are stressors that we've never dealt with before. And so just give yourself grace, your administrators, your colleagues, and rest. Try to rest. Our superintendent has asked us to not contact teachers or really anyone unless there's an emergency between 7 a.m. or I'm sorry, after 5 p.m. or before 7 a.m. And the same is true for folks contacting administrators. And there's not been a day yet that I haven't had an emergency after, during those hours. So just know that we're people too, and we're dealing with a lot of fires that we're putting out and trying our very best. So.
Thank you for the advice. Grace is needed. And thank you ever so much for sharing this morning.
Just one more thing. I know I see some people in the chat talking about using, Google Docs and files for their students. Just make sure that those are secure places to put your information, because Google sometimes is not a secure server. Just make sure that you check with your tech people that you have a secure server where those files are going, just to make sure that you're in compliance with FERPA.
Good, thank you.